Test? Yeah, it works? All right. I'm going to talk about what I see as a path to creating beneficial artificial general intelligence. There's a lot of overlap between my vision and that of Itamar Arrow, who just spoke. Also some differences. This is not a purely theoretical talk. A lot of what I'm talking about relates to work I'm doing right now in my companies Novamente and BioMind, and in my collaboration with the Artificial Brain Lab at Xiamen University in China. And if you go to Goertzel.org/summit09, I put my slides online there. You can also see a longer version of this talk that I recorded, which goes into more detail. I'm going to talk kind of fast to try to pack up a lot of information into 20 minutes. This talk also it's sort of a continuation of a talk I gave at the Transvision Conference in Helsinki, Finland in 2006, which was called 10 Years to a Positive Singularity. And that was 2006, and now I've only got 7 years left, right? But there was a caveat. It was 10 years to a positive singularity if we really, really try. And in the spirit of Itamar's talk, I agree with him that we could be there to a human level AGI within 10 years if enough resources and attention were put on the problem. I tried to make that case in that talk in 2006. I'm going to talk now more about what I think specifically is a path by which we can get there. There's a lot of technologies which are important for creating the singularity. I think they're all important and fascinating. I'm going to focus mainly on artificial cognitive science and AI and a little bit of robotics because that's what I do. Specifically, I'm going to talk about artificial general intelligence, the attempt to create software that can achieve complex goals in complex environments, including goals that were not conceived at the time the AI system was programmed or created. So systems that are autonomously generally intelligent in the same sense that people are. There's a lot of ways you could go about trying to create a general intelligence. You could try to extend existing narrow AI programs like Google or autonomous cars or game-playing programs. You could take a chatbot like the next version of the Ramona chatbot that my company Novamente has built for Ray Kurzweil, which should be launched soon on KurzweilAI.net. You take a chatbot and try to give it more and more common sense knowledge. You can, as Randall and Anders talked about today, you can try to study what's in the brain and emulate the brain in computers at various levels of precision. You can take an artificial life approach, try to evolve intelligence in the computer analogously to how it evolved on the Earth. As Marcus Hutter will discuss in his talk here, you can use the abstract mathematics of general intelligence and try to use that to come up with a provably correct design for an AGI. The approach I'm going to focus on here, the one I'm taking in my own work, is what I call integrative cognitive architecture, where you take bits and pieces of ideas from all these other paradigms and put them together in a sort of overall mind wiring diagram, which is inspired by cognitive science. And I'm not the only one taking this approach. We see here a diagram from Stan Franklin's Light Architecture, a diagram from SOAR up in the right corner, and a diagram from my own OpenCog system that I'm going to talk about a bit more. All of these approaches I've just described are digital computer-based. I know that the next talk by Stuart Hameroff is going to present the perspective that you actually need quantum computers or quantum gravity computers to implement AGI systems with human-like intelligence. I'm fairly skeptical of that, but even if it's true, I don't see it as a killer of the project to build a thinking machine. It just means we have to rejigger our algorithms to run on quantum computers or quantum gravity computers. Having said that, I think achievement of human-level AI on digital computers like we have now is the most likely hypothesis based on known science, so I'm going to assume that for the rest of my talk. The philosophy of mind underlying my own approach to integrative AGI, it's described in a 2006 book I wrote called The Hidden Pattern. Technical details are online at opencog.org and the OpenCog wiki site. And there's a book I'm currently writing and hope to release in the second quarter of next year called Building Better Minds, which should go through my approach to building an AGI in some detail. Of course, there's a lot of subtlety underlying my approach to creating AI and digital computers. Otherwise, there wouldn't be a bunch of books on it. But in a very, very simple high-level overview, and following up some of what Itamar discussed, 5 of the more important concepts underlying intelligence, be it human or digital, are perception, memory, prediction, action, and goals. You can look at the mind as using perception and memory to do prediction of which actions will help it achieve its goals. And what Itamar discussed was the hierarchical structure of memory and perception, and then reinforcement learning has to do with prediction, action, and goals. And I think we have a good understanding of intelligence and what it's about on the high level from the last few decades of cognitive science, the mathematics of AI, reinforcement learning, and so forth. Of course, the devil's in the details. And one of the most important ideas underlying my detailed approach to AI is what I call cognitive synergy. And this has to do with the well-known fact that the human mind, and I believe a computer mind, contains many different kinds of memory. So we have declarative memory, we have procedural memory, episodic memory, sensory memory. These kinds of memories all connect to each other. Each of them is connected with specific kinds of learning. So logical inference has to do with declarative knowledge, with our facts and beliefs. Procedure learning, learning how to do things, is more to do with reinforcement and evolutionary learning. Sensory and episodic learning have more to do with mental movies and simulations inside our minds. And the different kinds of learning associated with these different kinds of memory each have to interoperate with each other closely to help each other out when they get stuck. And the human mind is very good at this, and I think this kind of synergy is something we can build into our AGI systems, which is one of the important factors in creating AGI. So inside my own AI systems, the proprietary Novamente cognition engine and the open source OpenCog system, we attempt to achieve this type of cognitive synergy by using a common knowledge representation, a sort of semantics/neural weighted labeled hypergraph representation to represent all the different kinds of knowledge from declarations, sensations, perceptions, and so forth. Put them all into the same knowledge base and let the nodes and links grow and interoperate with each other. And in our specific AI system, then each of the types of memory is associated with specific algorithms. So say declarative knowledge is associated with a logic engine called probabilistic logic networks, which is described in the book I published last year. Procedural knowledge is associated with Moses, a probabilistic evolutionary learning system. Episodic knowledge is associated with a simulation engine inside the system. So there's specific algorithms plugged into each of these slots designed to work well together. Some of the specific things we're doing with this software system right now, with our OpenCog sort of proto-AGI system, there's a language understanding engine called RELEX. So you type in a sentence, like very simple example shown there, so it will fit on the slide. I saw the man with the telescope. Classic ambiguous sentence from linguistics. And it blows that out into a bunch of nodes and links. We have a node for each of the words, nodes for the syntactic and semantic relationships between the words. The nodes and links are then in the system's memory. They can be reasoned on and correlated with other things. It can do very simple common sense reasoning, like a child. You type in some sentences. I saw the man with the telescope. He was wearing a red shirt. The system's probabilistic logic engine churns a bit. It says, oh, that means you saw a man dressed in red. I mean, it's very simple, but it's kind of cool to be able to do inference where the premises and conclusion are in English rather than some logical notation. A lot of our work lately has been based on virtual embodiment. So we use the AI to control virtual dogs or virtual humans in online virtual worlds. So I'm going to show a couple of short videos now of the AI controlling a virtual dog, kind of going around in the world, seeing stuff, building mental representations, learning behaviors, and so forth. So you see here, this is the multiverse virtual world. The AI is going to control a dog. The humans are controlled by human players. And the thought bubbles were appended onto the videos afterwards just to show a small percentage of the nodes and links formed in the system's mind as it goes around in the world. So the dog is looking. Oh, there's something that is a type of fountain. There's something that's a type of ball. And in the little window there, the person can type to the dog. In this video, the dog doesn't talk back. In the next one, I'm going to show the dog does answer some simple questions. So she says, hey, there's a ball near the fountain. It registers that as nodes and links. I mean, that fountain that's full of water. Okay, well, there are 2 fountains there. And the specific point this video shows is the human is going to say something ambiguous. And the dog has to resolve the linguistic ambiguity by reference to what it saw in the world. And this is what linguists call symbol grounding, the ability to resolve words occurring in language by reference to the world. So that language isn't just an empty series of tokens. The language is something that has reference to the dog's sensory and motoric experience. So she said, grab it, and the dog knew what it was because she said, grab it, grab the ball near the fountain full of water. So it knew it must be the ball near the fountain full of water because there's only one fountain full of water there and only one ball near the fountain full of water. So this next video shows some simple question answering behavior. Mostly it's binary yes-no questions. At the end, there's some questions where the dog has to formulate sentences as well. The dog has its own emotions based on the simulated model of emotions in the cognitive engine, and it has some simulated physiology. So it needs food. It has a certain amount of energy. If it runs out of energy, it gets tired. So is it afraid? No. Is he happy? Yeah, he's happy. He's happy because we programmed him to be happy. Right? Is he hungry? No, he's not hungry. Right? Does he have to dump a load? Let's see. No, he doesn't have to dump a load. No, that's nice. Look around. Okay, so he's been taught to look around. He's told to look around. He looks. He sees what's in front of him. Now he can answer questions about what he saw. Obviously, the animation isn't the smoothest possible, but that's not the point here. Is the red ball next to the tree? Yep. Well, he's correct. Is the bone next to the fountain? No. So it understands a certain number of relations next to, on top of, beneath prepositional relations. And you can teach it more prepositional relations through experience. What color is the ball? The ball is red. So see, that's quite simple, but what happens is what color is the ball is turned into nodes and links in the system's knowledge base. Then the ball is red is more nodes and links, then it has to turn that back into English. So it's not like a chatbot that goes from text to text. It goes from text to knowledge and then back to text, and then reasoning and learning can intervene in the middle. So that's a whole different sort of thing. Something else we've been doing with our virtually embodied AI is teaching the dogs tricks by a combination of imitation and reinforcement learning. So, for example, you want to teach the dog to sit down. You say, hey dog, look at me, I'm going to sit. Then you sit down, it watches you. You say, okay, that was sitting. It can then identify the word sit with the behavior that it saw. It can map its body parts into your body parts. It can then try to sit on its own. If it does it right, you say good dog. If it does it wrong, you say bad dog. And this video shows a dog being taught to play the classic and timeless game of fetch by a couple human beings. And this is a teaching involving two teachers. So basically, one of the human-controlled avatars is a teacher. The other is kind of acting the role of the dog. So some girl is going to play fetch with some other girl, and the dog is going to try to learn from that. Actually, they're not girls. They're Brazilian male programmers simulating girls. It's a common phenomenon online, I guess. So they played a round of fetch. They said, I'm done playing fetch. Now they're going to try to get the dog to play fetch. If it does a good job, they'll say, good dog, he gets a reward, and he wants a reward because we programmed him to want a reward. And if he does a bad job, then you say, bad dog, and then that just crushes his universe. He's got to learn to do the right thing. So he knows he's sitting. He's been told to try to fetch now. Let's see how he does. Bad boy. Well, he got the ball, but he just sat there with the ball. And my dog often does that, actually. He's happy to get the ball. He doesn't want to give it back to you, right? So he's going to try again. Now he's trying a new procedure, fetch number 2. We'll see if the new procedure works better. So this, again, it's a very simple behavior. It's not surprising you can get it after a couple tries. To learn something more difficult, we'll take it more trials in this, of course. So it was good. Fetch 2 was good for Diana. I guess it was good for him as well. So he learned to play fetch. Now, working with the virtual world is valuable in terms of giving you integrated perception, action, language, socialization, cognition in a relatively tractable environment. I think there is a certain richness that you get from the physical world that these simple virtual worlds don't have. And toward that end, we're also using the same AI system to control physical robots. And this is work I'm doing in collaboration with Xiamen University in South China, in the artificial brain lab there. So we have these 3 now humanoid robots there. And we got a grant from the Chinese National Science Foundation, which is a 3-year grant, to basically take the virtual pet code and port it to the humanoid robots, which of course involves a whole bunch of extra work. It's just getting started now, working it up to vision processing and motor control and so forth. And part of the idea underlying there, again harking back to Itamar's talk, we're using a hierarchical neural network to handle visual perception and actuation, and we're using the OpenCog semantic/neural net that I described already to handle language and reasoning and so forth. So it's what you call neural symbolic architecture, combining some of the deep learning stuff Itamar was discussing with the more abstract symbolic AI stuff that I've been doing. So all this is really fun, and I think it's the right path to make a system that has common sense knowledge and genuine understanding of the world. It's not in itself tremendously useful. I mean, these now robots and virtual dogs don't help the world on their own. They're a step on the path. On the other hand, there's a lot of AI applications that do very useful things right now. I'm going to describe a few of them. One path that I see to impressive and valuable AGI is to take this sort of childlike research AGI we're building, put it together with narrow AI applications that do helpful things right now, and then we can get more and more advanced early-stage AGI systems. So one area of applied AI I've worked in a lot is bioinformatics. We've used machine learning and language processing tools to help biologists do what they do better and understand biological data and text. There's been a lot of cool stuff in this area. Some guys have even made AI lab robots that formulate their own experiments, carry out the experiments, analyze the data, design new experiments, and keep going. The work I've done has been more in the vein of data analysis. In 2005, we worked with some guys from the University of Virginia. We found a close to 100% accurate way to predict who's going to get Parkinson's disease by analyzing their mitochondrial DNA. And that's going to be released as a diagnostic once it gets approved. We found the first evidence of a genetic basis for chronic fatigue syndrome, again using AI to analyze genetics data. We analyzed a bunch of data regarding calorie restriction in mice and understood a lot about the genetic underpinnings of how calorie restriction extends life. Most recently, we've been working with a company called Genetian, which Gregory Benford will talk about later in this summit. They have these flies called the Methuselah Flies that live 5 times as long as regular flies. And we're looking at the gene expression in these flies, and we see a lot of interesting stuff. So you can see there's networks involving tumor suppressor genes, metabolic genes, heat shock response genes. We've blanked out the gene names there because they're Genetian's proprietary IP. But I think there's a lot of interesting stuff we've gotten in terms of applying AI to understand why these flies live so long. We find some genes related to human neurological disorders. I mean, the purpose here is if we can understand why these flies live so long using AI, maybe we can use some of that knowledge to help people to live longer. One of my favorite genes that came up in this analysis is the Drosophila melanogaster death executioner homolog. So that, I saw that there. It indicated to me maybe the AI was on the right track anyway. We've done some work as well using AI to look through all the biomedical research abstracts in PubMed and let NIH biologists kind of ask simple questions. How does this gene relate to that gene? Surf through millions of PubMed articles and summarize the information. And all these narrow AI applications I think are very valuable. Where I really think things have to go is to take the integrative cognitive architecture that we're using for the virtual dogs and the humanoid robot, put that together in the same system with these various narrow AI applications for analyzing, for example, biomedical data and text. Once these are all together in the same knowledge representation in the same system, you got something that has the common sense knowledge of these dogs and robots, as well as the specialized expertise of these machine learning and language processing biology applications. And I think that this can be a viable application to making smarter and smarter general intelligent systems. I think it's a viable path. So I'm going to touch briefly on the ethics issues that some previous speakers have discussed. I mean, one of the nice things about biology applications is you're doing good on the path to AGI. Not only you're trying to create a thinking machine, which is a great thing, but you're helping cure diseases and diagnose diseases along the way. Of course, there's also the possibility of less benevolent applications of AGI. If you go to deadlyai.org, you can find the website of the Society for the Promotion of Universal Non-Existence through Malicious AI. Now, fortunately, that's a joke, but the potential danger posed by AI is not a joke. I mean, you have the possibility of humans using AGIs to do bad stuff. You have the possibility of AGIs self-improving and evolving to do bad stuff, even though no human intended them to. And in this line, I have to give a pitch for my daughter's movie. Now, if you go to lepuppy.org/Gates, you can see a 4-minute classic film made by my 12-year-old daughter on how the flaws in the Windows operating system may combine with a bad AGI motivational system to annihilate us all. The blue screen of death once and for all. So what's actually the solution? I mean, is it just, don't worry, be happy, and everything's going to be good? Fortunately, that's not really my plan. And I think we can build ethics into the AGI architecture. I don't have much time left, but I gave a talk at AGI 08, a technical conference on AGI systems called Stages of Ethical Development in AGI Systems, where I go over how you can try to lead an AGI through stages of ethical maturity by basically building ethical behavior into the cognitive architecture, which I think is a very important thing to do. One amusing thing I noticed, if you look at Google Videos, where this talk is online, Google Videos recommends similar videos. The number 2 recommended video is an animation on the life of Chairman Mao. So I'm not sure what Google's narrow AI is thinking there, actually. But on a more serious note, the ethical architecture that I outlined in the talk at AGI 08 has to do with this same notion of cognitive synergy. So just as you have different kinds of memory which need to interoperate with each other to let a system effectively achieve its goals, you have different kinds of ethical behavior associated with the different kinds of memory. So declarative knowledge goes along with a formal understanding of justice. Episodic knowledge goes along with memory and simulation of specific ethical behaviors from your past and so forth. So I think we can build ethics, ethical synergy, different kinds of ethical behavior into the architecture. And this has to play into our roadmap to general intelligence. And in that vein, I'll mention a workshop that Itamar and I have organized, which is later this month in Knoxville. We've gathered together a dozen of academic and industry AI researchers to kind of plan out together a roadmap toward human-level AI, sort of a step of incremental milestones getting from here to the end goal of a human-level thinking machine. I've told you what I'm doing. I'll take just a half a minute to suggest what you can do. If you're programmers, software engineers, we have an open source AGI project. This stuff with the virtual dogs and robots is based on open source code. Go to opencog.org. We're eager for C++ programmers to help us build the next level of intelligence on the planet. If you're not a programmer, there's a lot of things you can do. Of course, one of the easiest ones is to donate money. And anyone who donates $100 or more will get a free with your payment, autographed copy of Building Better Minds. So there's AGI 10, third conference on AGI, Lugano, Switzerland, March 2010. And in summary, I agree with Ray Kurzweil that the singularity is near. I think it can be even nearer than Ray projects it is if we follow a direct and straightforward path toward engineering artificial general intelligence using my own system, Itamar's system, or any of a handful of other viable AGI architectures that are out there. I think it's something real and concrete that we do know how to do now, and we have software that we're building toward this end.